Mercy is an interesting hero. When you think about characters with a lot of carry potential, chances are that your mind wanders to the DPS category, especially the hitscan variety. But few players would say that smurfing as Mercy would have much of an impact at all. I mean, how do you go about carrying as a character that tethers herself to her teammates in hopes of them doing the work for her? Press right click even harder? Granted, I might be a bit biased, and those of you who have been around the channel for a while know that I absolutely hate Mercy. And that's a good thing. Experienced Mercy players are slippery as all heck. They make it impossible to 1v1 anyone on their team, and they keep getting away with reses that should see them punished for. That's to say that a Mercy player very well can carry, and when they do, it's incredibly annoying. Don't believe me? Well, I'm about to prove it. Now, the original idea for this episode was to talk about the experimental changes, seeing as how ML7 has revived the idea of the mass res, but, well, I don't play Mercy, at least not since the incident. And pretty much every Mercy player on my Discord said that playing her on that patch was absolute torture. Instead, I've decided to show you guys that mass res or no, good Mercy players are a force to be reckoned with. When a 3800 SR peak support descends into the realms of Platinum, they will make their presence known even while playing that hero. So ladies and gentlemen, look out for the angel in the sky and keep your thanks macro at the ready, because our story today takes place on Nepal. And what better place to show off the power of a support hero than in a game mode that is all about getting eliminations. Something tells me that the right click button is gonna see a lot of use today. But biases aside, this match was about to begin, so let's find out if JINX was pulling a prank on me or if this gameplay is as good as she claims. And right from the get-go, you can tell that this Platinum match is gonna be about herding cats, with her team showing about as much cohesion as diarrhea. While KD was working their way into the blue team's backline, Emperor, what a fitting name for a Reinhardt, decided to do that main tank thing where they try to play the objective. But utterly unimpressed by the sheer amount of damage raining in on her split teammates, JINX effortlessly danced around the battlefield to keep everyone topped off. She even went for a cheeky fake out, pretending to drop down to avoid damage. With a reaction time that puts even Masters Mercy players I have seen to shame, JINX knew exactly where to be at any given time to either provide the left or right click variety of support. She mopped up after the rest of her team no matter how much they decided to feed, and with that wind at the back of their sails, the rest of the red team could push on forward as soon as the first capture was secured. The blue team would now have to find a way to push past the choke point, but our heroes had employed the aid of a supercharged and mercy-pocketed Symmetra, who really drove home the fact that Nepal was closed. But it's not like being told to chill ever stopped the Tracer player from going in anyway, so they yeeted into a bouncer with a pulse bomb. This was bad news. The red team needed their Symmetra to keep up the choke point hold, but Resurrection was still on cooldown. In this moment of need, Emperor stepped in like the Giga Chat that they are, holding off the attackers long enough for JINX Resurrection to come online. But they weren't done yet. The blue team had used their brief intermission to enter the Mega Room and stacked up perfectly for Emperor to land a shatter and sent the enemy Sigma back to their spawn. Though there was more than one Mercy in this lobby, and as much as Bulma did not have the APM of a 3800 peak support, they went for the res and even got away with it. That resurrection was equally as important as the red team's res on the sim, because this Sigma had an ultimate and they were dying to give Reinhardt a taste of their own medicine. The defenders were getting chased down with reckless abandon, but once again, death is only a temporary obstacle in the face of a lag? Oh boy, it looks like the replay system is not ready for the Galaxy Brain plays that are about to take place in this match. That's right, my friends, what at first appeared as though JINX was cutting her losses to play her life was actually her getting Symmetra back on their feet again. And as you can imagine, a soldier with plat aim versus a sim with a mercy pocket in a small room was only gonna go one way. The Sigma had the foresight to not step foot into the meat grinder, but little did they know that their meat would be ground regardless, because these blades are spinning and ain't no kinetic grasp was gonna stop them from chopping you up. After a brief turnover to the opposition, the capture point was once again secured by JINX and her team, though it may appear as though nobody wanted to be the one to actually stay on it long enough to confirm the flip. At this point, even I as a Mercy hater have to admit that I'm kind of impressed. In typical Platinum fashion, JINX's team found ways to feed off cooldown, and most of the things they did right, they probably did so completely by accident. Alas, the winged goddess swapped the beams faster than Blizzard patches fun mechanics and correctly identified the right targets to boost at any given time. Seeing Bulma just mindlessly pocket a single player really showed the difference between the genuine Plat and the Smurf. I can only imagine how angry the Sigma was when failing to stop JINX from rezzing. But every carry has its limits, and when the enemy diva opened up the next fight by yeeting Nev off the map, things began to fall apart. Turns out nano-boosted micro-rockets really hurt and give you next to no time to get the heck out of dodge. The blue team was beaten, but not defeated, and if there's one thing that is for certain in Overwatch, it's that it doesn't matter how good you are. If the enemy team has more ultimates than yours, it's anyone's game to take. And in this case, the blue team did all the taking, smashing the defense defenders to bits before laying claim to the capture point. Once again, JINX was showing off that her brain had many more wrinkles than that of an average platinum player. Any other Mercy would have gone for that res, but she correctly identified the risk and decided against needlessly putting herself in danger. I'm sorry, but I need to point these things out because if I don't, the narrative that all Mercy players play the same will never stop. And part of that narrative is the belief that Mercy players can only win games on the back of a good team, which is why it's also important for me to point out the fact that JINX's team knew little more than smashing down W in sheer disregard of their safety, allowing even the boldest flank to get a lot more value than it should. The red team was in big trouble now, with Whole Hog and Valkyrie invested in a futile fight and them getting absolutely stuffed in a choke point. There was nothing that JINX could do in order to turn the tables. Is what I would say if this wasn't platinum. Yeah, the red team had used some ultimates, but not all of them. Also, they had a lever, but that is not going to be relevant until like the third act. Let's just say that rolling your face across the keyboard is common practice in this rank, to the point where even JINX found herself confused over the firework of ultimates that had sprung out of nowhere. But as the chaos ensued, she found yet another opportunity to make use of it. Moira players are not beholden to the accuracy requirements of many other heroes, and as such, they made for the perfect target to boost in this rank. Eliminations began piling up in their favor as the blue team was pushed back with the force of 1,000 angry forum posts, and when the dust settled, there was nothing left to do but helplessly throw their bodies on the objective to keep overtime going. At last, there was the red team that took home the first round thanks to JINX consistently finding ways to get the most out of them. So long that her teammates don't let this win get to their heads, surely they'll be able to take home the next one as well. So far in this match, JINX really did make a great impact. The blue team was mindlessly flailing about with their Mercy tethered to the DPS, whilst the red team was, well, equally flailing about, but with a Mercy that actually made use of her character's kit. Few things could stand in the way of these guys' impending victories, so long that their opponents continue to let JINX get away with her shenanigans. So let's see if the blue team can adapt, or if the red team continues to roll. And right from the get-go, their Symmetra went for the ultimate act of disrespect, boldly teleporting onto the capture point just to get blown into pieces. Yeah, ironically, it wasn't the blue team's effort more than sabotage within the ranks of JINX's own team that caused them to lose the first fight at record speed. Granted, you can blame the D.Va for not using defense matrix as much as the Symmetra for the bad teleport placement, but the result stays the same. The first cap went to the blue team. Where most players in higher ranks would say, alright, my bad, let's just run it back. Emperor instead decided that more W would naturally result in more winning. Without a tank to protect the squishies, the enemy soldier went for a flank to make use of that opportunity, just to remember that his aim was garbage before running away from a Moira. Emperor was defeated deep in the blue team's backline, but all that chaos allowed JINX to get away with yet another res. And it was that res that made all the difference because, alright, listen guys, I'm not gonna pretend like every move she executes is somehow going to transfer into a carry. Their Symmetra was the one who truly made use of the chaos, getting away with more microwaving than your average episode of Kitchen Nightmares. And the capture point went to the red team. Oh yeah, remember when I said that JINX team being one player down was gonna become relevant later? Well, let me introduce you to the third act. The reason that the last fight was so easy is because effectively this match was a 5v5. Speak of Overwatch 2 beta, am I right fellas? Just that in this case, the red team had sacrificed their player to the ISP gods whilst Get Clipped and the blue team was bing chilling, as the kids would say. Their backline adventure achieved absolutely nothing of value, and all that effort eventually came to an abrupt conclusion when the red team's Moira hunted them down. But since Get Clipped was back in the front line, their team could approach the next team fight at full force, though not all was lost, because so long that JINX and friends remained vigilant and bait the attackers under the sim turrets, who am I kidding, of course Emperor hit the charge button, the blue team took that invitation to thoroughly tank diff their opposition before marching onto the objective. Needless to say that the doors were wide open for a counterattack, and it didn't exactly take a lot of effort to send the red team packing. Now that the blue team had reunited, being one player down became a lot more of an issue. JINX had to find a way to make that resurrection count just to even the odds, but with the team so insistent to hammer down on the W key, that would be difficult. And to make matters worse, Get Clipped was not done trying to get clips. With an aerial assault over the rooftops, this Junkrat came flying in to deliver justice from above. JINX's team was wasting valuable time trying to deal with that backline menace, whilst the capture progress continued to tick away in favor of the opposition. In typical Reinhardt fashion, Emperor made an effort to push forward and secure space, with a Shatter aiming to counteract that amplification matrix. Unfortunately for them, the enemy Roadhog saw that coming, and the only space that was secured was the corner that they were pushed into with an amplified Whole Hog. Yeah, not a lot that you can do in that case if your name is JINX. But whatever your name is, this was the time for solutions not problems. Capture progress was approaching 100% in favor of the blue team, and Lord knows that there was no way this party of plats could hold their mental together in the face of a lever. And that is exactly what I suspect happened when Emperor once again unleashed their demon to charge headfirst into the defenders just to meet their eventual and inevitable demise. With their main tank having perished deeply in enemy territory, getting a resurrection off would be impossible. This run was about to close, and nothing short of a miracle would allow JINX to bring it back from the brink of annihilation. The red team was at wit's end. Until Valkyrie came back online. JINX hit that Q button the instant her ultimate was ready and yeeted over to bring Emperor back into the game. But why the Reinhardt, you might wonder? The red team needed a distraction, a big sack of HP that takes the defender's attention for the true damage monster to roll up on the capture point. All she needed Emperor to achieve was to soak some damage and get a single elimination to turn the tables. And the Reinhardt did not disappoint. In a flashy display of recklessness, Emperor deleted the enemy Baptiste before getting MTD'd yet again. But it mattered not, for their plan was already in full effect, and finally they succeeded in getting Symmetra onto the capture point. They covered the kill feed in red as they fought tooth and nail to stay in the game. And that was all that JINX and her friends needed to take home the dub. With her Rotok continuously securing early picks, her Symmetra securing the capture point, and JINX herself securing the boost, they had done it. A 5v6 victory on the back of one of the smartest Mercy players I ever had the pleasure of spectating on this channel. You might not get me to like your hero, JINX, but that gameplay sure was impressive. And if you thought that winning a 5v6 was easy because JINX was smurfing, what about you check out my last episode in which a team of bronze players had to do the same thing without the help of a smurf. Where this lever was only relevant in the third act, our last hero had a lot more on their plate when it came to making up for the loss. If that catches your fancy, feel free to check out the card on screen right now. But until then, thank you everybody so much for watching. Don't forget to drop me a like on your way out if you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you want to see more, and definitely ring that bell icon to not miss out on my next upload. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and until next time, peace.